In the 1930s, these crops were hope itself, cheap, hardy, and life-saving. But time turned them into outlaws. What once fed millions now threatens ecosystems and laws alike. These are the 20 banned Depression-era crops you will not believe were once kitchen staples. Once hailed as a savior of eroding hillsides and hungry families, kudzu was planted by the millions across the American South. In the 1930s, the Soil Conservation Service handed out an estimated 85 million plants to landowners to control erosion and restore depleted soils. With soft leaves, purple fragrant blooms, and rapid growth, it seemed like nature's answer to every problem. But, as someone once said, nature rarely stays polite. Kudzu now blankets millions of acres, climbing over trees, telephone poles, abandoned buildings, native vegetation, and anything else in its path, choking life out of landscapes. What began as a hero crop became a nightmare vine. Planted for good, it became impossible to control, and today it stands as a stark reminder. A plant introduced with one purpose can end up rewriting every ecosystem it touches. With giant white blooms that stretch across 2-foot-wide heads and stalks reaching 10 to 15 feet, giant hogweed looked like an ornamental gardener's dream. But the dream turned dark. Originally imported as a garden showpiece, this plant hides a sinister secret. Its sap contains chemicals that, when exposed to sunlight, cause severe burns, blistering, and even permanent scarring. On top of that human health crisis, it invades wild and semi-wild land with reckless abandon. The United States Department of Agriculture lists it as a federally noxious weed, meaning it is illegal to sell or transport across state lines. What was once a dramatic garden center plant now stands as a symbol of how beauty can mask danger and how innocence can turn into menace. Delicate petals in pinks, purples, and whites once graced cottage gardens, and the poppy seed, tiny and innocuous, sprinkled breads and treats for generations. But beneath that innocent exterior lurked the raw material for some of the most potent narcotics known to man: morphine, heroin, and opium. In the United States, cultivation of the opium poppy is highly controlled. An individual planting it without a license risks serious legal consequences. What started as a resource for medicine and food became criminalized, not because the petals looked threatening, but because what could be extracted from the pods threatened entire communities. The tragic irony: a plant that fed families and beautified gardens became forbidden fruit in a war on drugs. To the eye, Japanese knotweed might look like a bold, bamboo-like shrub with thick, hollow shoots and broad leaves. Some people still treat it as an ornamental, but in parts of the U.S., the plant has earned the title of ultimate invader. It spreads underground in massive rhizome networks, pops up from a single fragment, and faces legal restrictions in several states. In states such as Michigan, it is illegal to introduce, possess, or transport this plant without a permit. Once planted for landscaping and erosion control, knotweed now undermines foundations, walls, and native plant communities, shifting from garden curiosity to a property owner's nightmare. With its lush purple blossoms and floating lily pad-like leaves, water hyacinth was once the picture of aquatic beauty, but underneath those attractive surfaces lies a threat. In places like Florida's waterways, it has smothered over 120,000 acres of lakes and rivers. The plant's astonishing growth rate allows it to form dense mats that block sunlight, lower oxygen levels in the water, kill fish, and disrupt boating and irrigation. That same plant, once planted as an ornament or in water gardens, now finds itself regulated, banned, and aggressively managed. The cautionary tale: a water plant that looked harmless became one of the most costly aquatic invaders. This leafy green, popular in Asian kitchens and known for its mild flavor and hollow stems, seems like a gardener's dream. Fast-growing, nutritious, easy to harvest. But in the United States, it carries a very different status. It is listed as a federal noxious weed and is illegal or restricted in many states. Water spinach is now heavily regulated in many states. The very traits that make it ideal for stir-fries, rapid growth, hollow stems that fragment easily, also make it ideal for invasion. Every stem fragment can root and start a new colony, particularly in waterways or wetlands. Once promoted for its food value, water spinach now stands as a reminder. Even the most benign food crop can become a regulatory nightmare when introduced into the wrong ecosystem. With feathery leaves, tolerance for poor soil, and rapid growth, Tree of Heaven once seemed like a gardener's shortcut. Quick shade, easy to plant, able to thrive where almost nothing else would. But this treacherous tree hides a secret. It releases all allelopathic chemicals that suppress neighboring plants. It spreads by root suckers and seeds, and it is the preferred host for the invasive pest spotted lanternfly. In many states, the sale or planting of Tree of Heaven is banned or strictly regulated. What once offered convenience now offers chaos. Cracked sidewalks, ruined foundations, and ecosystems pushed aside in the race for dominance. Planted widely in a bygone era for wildlife food, erosion control, and living fences, autumn olive looked like a win-win. Red edible berries, nitrogen-fixing roots, fast growth. But the fast growth turned into uncontrolled spread. This Asian native shrub now invades forests, fields, and roadsides across the U.S., outcompeting native plants, altering soils, and forming dense thickets. In lots of states, the sale or planting of autumn olive is now restricted or banned. Irony: what was once planted to heal the land now disrupts it. The bright red berry may look inviting, but... 9. Cot Catha edulis. At first glance, cot looks harmless, a neat green shrub with small glossy leaves. But within those leaves lie cathinone and cathine, natural stimulants that deliver an amphetamine-like rush. In East Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, chewing fresh cot leaves is a centuries-old tradition, providing energy for work and social gatherings. When it reached American shores, it was not seen as a crop at all. It was seen as a controlled substance in waiting. By 1993, the DEA listed cot's active ingredients as Schedule I drugs, placing it in the same category as heroin. Growing it, even for cultural or botanical interest, is a federal crime under the Controlled Substances Act. What was once a social custom abroad became contraband in America, a reminder that cultural context can mean the difference between heritage and a felony. Hydrilla began its U.S. life innocently enough, a pretty aquarium plant, oxygenating fish tanks and backyard ponds. But once fragments escaped into open waterways, it transformed into an aquatic monster. Every tiny piece can sprout a new colony, forming dense underwater jungles that choke lakes, block boat propellers, and suffocate fish. States from Florida to California spend millions each year fighting it, yet hydrilla keeps advancing. The U.S. Department of Agriculture classifies it as a federal noxious weed, making its sale and transport illegal nationwide. It is even nicknamed the perfect aquatic weed because it adapts to nearly any condition. During the Great Depression, aquatic greens like hydrilla were sometimes tested as livestock feed or pond crops. Now they are treated as biological disasters. A plant once prized for beauty became a cautionary tale about the cost of careless imports. Light, lacy, and delicate, giant salvinia looks like harmless floating lace. But beneath that velvet surface hides an ecological threat unlike almost any other. Native to South America, this free-floating fern doubles its mass in as little as 2 days, forming mats so thick they block sunlight and air from reaching the water below. Entire lakes can vanish under its green carpet. Once grown in ornamental ponds, it has now invaded waterways from Texas to Louisiana and beyond. USDA lists it as a federal noxious weed, Just possessing it can trigger fines. What's worse, even a teaspoon of plant fragments can colonize a new pond. During hard times, people harvested aquatic plants like this for animal feed. Today, officials race to eradicate every trace before it turns wetlands into stagnant wastelands. Known in aquariums as Anacharis, this graceful underwater plant once symbolized life and purity, a staple for fish tanks and educational experiments. But when hobbyists dumped aquarium water into creeks, the escape was complete. Native to South America, Brazilian Elodea found perfect conditions in American waterways. It grows several inches a day, crowding out native vegetation, clogging boat motors, and disrupting hydroelectric systems. Many states now prohibit its sale or transport, and federal agencies spend millions in control efforts. Ironically, in the 1930s, it was studied as a cheap, protein-rich water crop to supplement livestock feed during the Depression. The plan worked until it worked too well. Today, that same miracle plant is a menace, reminding us that even the best intentions can take root in the worst ways. Before it became a banned invader, water chestnut was an American staple. Indigenous peoples harvested its hard, starchy nuts for centuries, boiling or roasting them as a reliable winter food. During the Depression, the plant's productivity made it a godsend for struggling families. One patch could yield hundreds of pounds of nutritious nuts. But its floating rosette soon carpeted entire lakes and rivers. The spiny nuts injured swimmers, tangled boat propellers, and deprived fish of oxygen. States from New York to Massachusetts have declared it a prohibited invasive species. Even possessing or transporting it can bring fines. What once symbolized hope became a hazard. Resourcefulness and survival now represents a cautionary parable about nature's balance, a reminder that food security bought through quick fixes can come at a steep ecological price. Its tall magenta spires once brightened Depression-era wetlands, providing nectar for bees and color for gardens when times were bleak. Settlers even cooked the young shoots as a pot herb, a little wild green in lean years. But beauty turned tyrant. Each loose-strife plant can produce up to 2 million seeds a year, spreading by water, wind, and mud-caked boots. By the 1950s, entire marshes across the Midwest were smothered beneath its violet blooms. Waterfowl lost nesting sites, fish lost breeding grounds, and wetlands lost biodiversity. Today, it's illegal to sell or transport purple loosestrife in most states. Biologists now people battled it with imported beetles that feed exclusively on it. It was a desperate fight to undo a gardener's mistake made nearly a century ago. In the 1930s, when barbed wire was scarce and money scarcer, farmers planted multiflora rows as living fences. Its arching canes and dense thorns kept livestock in and predators out. The red hips provided vitamin C when citrus was unaffordable, and wildlife thrived on its berries. But once the fences spread, the roses didn't stop. Birds carried the seeds everywhere, and soon whole pastures vanished beneath impenetrable thickets. The same traits that made it useful made it unstoppable. States from Iowa to New York now list it as a prohibited weed, outlawing its sale or propagation. What was once promoted by the U.S. Department of Agriculture itself now costs landowners millions in eradication. A Depression hero turned modern villain, proof that even beauty with purpose can become a curse. European settlers brought garlic mustard across the Atlantic as a culinary herb, a mild, garlicky green perfect for stews when fresh produce was scarce. During the Depression, foragers prized it as a free, nutrient-rich vegetable in forest edges. But this little herb hides chemical weapons. It releases compounds that poison surrounding soil for native plants, a phenomenon called allelopathy. By the 1980s, forests across the Northeast were carpeted in garlic mustard, choking out spring wildflowers and tree seedlings. It's now listed as invasive and banned for sale in many regions, for a plant that once symbolized thrift and survival, it now represents something else entirely. How the simplest home remedy or kitchen green can become a nationwide ecological problem. During the Depression, Americans read about Andean farmers chewing coca leaves to fight hunger and exhaustion. Some horticulturists even experimented with cultivating coca in greenhouses for medicinal alkaloid extraction. But when cocaine abuse exploded in the early 20th century, federal policy turned ironclad. The coca plant itself, not just its processed form, became illegal to grow under the Controlled Substances Act. In its native lands, coca remains sacred, chewed in moderation and deeply woven into culture. In the U.S., though, even a single plant is treated as intent to manufacture. What was once seen as an herbal stimulant became a symbol of the war on drugs, the fall of a leaf from cultural medicine to criminal evidence. Few crops are more ironic than Johnson grass. Imported from the Mediterranean in the 1800s as a hardy forage to feed cattle, it quickly became one of America's most hated weeds. By the 1930s, desperate farmers still relied on it. It grew where almost nothing else would during Dust Bowl years. But Johnson grass hides a toxic twist. Under drought or frost stress, it can produce cyanide compounds that poison livestock. Its roots spread underground faster than most plows could keep up. Today, it's listed as a noxious weed in over 20 states, making transport or sale illegal. Once a Depression-era survival feed, it's now an agricultural scourge so persistent that farmers still burn and retill their land to hold it back. A lesson in unintended consequences written in roots and rhizomes. In the 1930s, federal conservation programs promoted Sericea lespedeza as a miracle plant. Drought-tolerant, nitrogen-fixing, and perfect for erosion control on exhausted Dust Bowl soils. It fed cattle, restored slopes, and promised resilience. But after decades, that promise soured. Sericea's tannins make it unpalatable to livestock, and its seeds remain viable for decades, spreading into prairies and forests where few native species can survive. States from Kansas to Missouri now listed as invasive or prohibited. Control costs soar into millions each year. What began as a symbol of recovery now stands as a warning etched into pastures. Not every plant that saves the land will keep it safe forever. Silver leaves, fragrant flowers, and edible berries. Russian olive. It was Depression-era elegance on a budget. Farmers planted it by the thousands for windbreaks, erosion control, and wildlife habitat. Hardy and drought-resistant, it thrived where fruit trees failed. But over time, the shrubs invaded stream banks, replacing cottonwoods and willows, lowering water tables and reshaping entire riparian ecosystems. Birds spread its seeds far beyond fences, and today it is listed as banned or restricted in many western states. What once symbolized resourcefulness now represents environmental cost. The silver sheen that once meant survival now marks a landscape struggling to reclaim its balance. From saviors to scourges, these 20 crops fed millions when America needed them most. Then they turned against the very land they saved. Each one tells a story of desperation, innovation, and unintended consequences. If you love. Uncovering the forgotten history of plants that shaped and sometimes scarred our nation. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment with the one that shocked you most, and tell us which lost crop you would dare to bring back.